Good morning everybody and welcome back to Hyrule, the series where I am building a Lego Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Hyrule Castle in minifigure scale. And of course, if you understand the island, then that is of course huge. We're back in today working on some detail bits and finishing up various projects across the castle, starting with this wall segment from above the docks. As you can see, we worked on these guardians in previous weeks, and I've touched up the flowers just a little bit more and made sure I'm happy. But one mistake that I noticed in the previous week where we were working on the slope in a sense that curves up next to it, the switchback as it is called, was that we were missing some little boulders which you can stand on, and they're actually like fully places which you can stand in this rock wall that are sort of at the height of this tower here. So the first thing I did this week is I busted a hole straight in this wall, it was about this side, and redid the rock work so that there's a little platform here. It's a small detail and barely noticeable, but it adds for a little bit of extra minifigure posing, and it was a big enough ledge that I was worried that it needed to be included for accuracy. It doesn't look great, not particularly interesting, but it was an addition we made to start off this week. But of course that's not all I have to show you, because let's go straight back to the switchback from last week and show you just how tall that's gotten, because the whole plate is done and now it's ready for detail work. When you saw this last week, it was about half the size. If I remember correctly, we were just sort of sloping up, maybe to here or here, but we had not finished all of this, and there is a lot to show. I've just started to do some of the detail work, as seen by adding some of the outdoor braziers, this is the design we've gone for these. We've got a square plate, a round plate with a hole in it, and then a stamp on piece upside down on the top with a flame in there. It's supposed to represent more of the carved sort of wooden flame torches which we see on the ground around the castle, but I chose dark tan instead just to give it a little bit more definition in compared to some of the other torches that we've seen. I think it stands out and it creates a nice little border here. Obviously, one of the big details that is missing is the pathing, the loose sort of tiles that are going to form the half grassy, half buried path all the way up. And that will definitely give this area that's underneath the doorway here a little bit more texture, and it may involve us having to elevate these as well. Hopefully by doing that, it will make things come to life a little bit more and seem a little less flat on this area. Beyond that, of course, this wall here, which we'll talk about in a second, is going to need some more texturing, including some mix-ups of this brickwork here, and the addition of pip studs and so on just to mix things up, as well as flowers and overgrown. This is one of the first areas which actually feels more like a curated castle, as you can see by the trees I've added. Yet another new design, this one's based on the three-leaf piece again, built around a central snot core. There's a couple of bricks tall, and it's actually built on a bar piece and studded into the ground. This makes it seem more like a poplar or topiary tree, and these are sort of guarding the edges at various different heights. I think I want to add a couple more, add a bit more depth. It seems a little flat, but it will look a lot better once we've actually got leaves on the ground, some bushes maybe, as well as more detail. There's not too much space to work with here though, so I had to do something that still felt in scale. This almost smaller medium scale of trees that we've been working on these modules is definitely becoming really useful for filling in gaps, and once this wall is textured behind, this area will look fantastic. Just need to get on the plants. But of course, let's not talk about the future, because a lot of progress has been made, including over here. The plate we just looked at with the Guardian will actually sit in right next door, as you might remember from last week. And all of these rocky outcrops which sit above the dock's entrance just below have been sort of added the rubble and are nice and flattened out and all of their correct heights. You can see sort of how this works, where you've got these three different levels built with wedge plates on top, and then the wall continues upwards to the full height, making this the second plate to reach the sort of full height of the second level. Only the second one to do so after the one we just took after, which means this castle is very slowly growing, and that is a fantastic sign. Obviously, we're going to be moving on the ground level to continue going forward, but this has been a really eye-opener for a test of progress, in a sense, to work out if the castle's working and whether my plan for a second floor is actually going to come to fruition. As you can see though, this one actually overlaps the Technic frame quite a bit. Obviously this Technic frame would be extended outwards and have full supports underneath here, but there's no need to do that in studio, just because, well, it would be a bit difficult. Let's focus in on that wall though now. As you can see, it's actually built sort of into a cliffside here, and on top we've used a variety of tiles to sort of simulate how the wall and the rock face are connected. There are no real gaps. Anything that would be gappy has sort of been covered up beyond this panel piece right here, and as I said, the wall just does its own thing on its own hinge system connected into what is a wall that is built on grid. Coming around, of course, this wall bends round and then goes into the same tower build. This is the same one but untextured from what we saw on the previous module that we just looked at. However, this side here is very different. This tower is all the same, just needs its texture. However, here it comes into an archway bridge. There's a couple of these across the castle, and basically it was really simple because all I had to do was modify this wall of a tower to make it blend in, add in the specialized textures that appear on this particular castle segment, and then try and come up with a design for the arch. The rest of the wall then sat nice and square on, built in, and then just curved around the corner, as you can see, built into the rockwork wall the same as the other end. Very square and angular, this piece, which gives it a really nice profile, and it makes it look a little more interesting when you zoom out and view the castle wall as a whole. Behind the castle wall, though, there's actually another little slope. This one was pretty challenging to build because I was curving around in a fairly limited space, but it's worked out perfectly fine. And as it curves back around, it comes almost around with the wall here. It becomes almost level for a bit and then comes up on top where I believe it then switches back again. Now, I'm also pretty sure there's some more castle wall up here, but that is future Octane's problem, will be dealt with in the future. Either way, a huge amount of progress made in this plate just for 1 week. Can't wait to texture it and try and come up with some more systems for these trees. We need to start sort of grounding down the lore for them in a sense, and that sounds stupid, lore for plastic trees in an overly stupid plastic castle project, but these trees are particularly important because they're really going to shape how the model feels and what parts feel like well-kept gardens and what parts sort of feel more naturey, just like on the rock. And we want this part to feel fairly civil, given that it's almost reaching not the top but the main pathways of the castle, but we also don't want it to be super formal either, so there's going to have to be some reconsideration with trees, I think, but we'll get there in the future. For now, though, let's show you the finished version of the water pump. As more, just like you guys, I'm ready to move on from that room, and I've started doing just that by laying the technic foundations for, surprise, surprise, the plate that actually is going to lie right here on the right of this one. We're not actually going to be working on this for a while, and at the moment it looks fairly similar to stuff you've already seen. It is important to mention that this butts up very nicely with the edge of the plate we just looked at. What you're looking at, of course, is my testing file, but also the Technic frame that is going to support the next water pump room, as well as this specific section of rock face, which is going to go up alongside it, which actually curves up and out a little bit. As you can see, the water pump is, of course, getting nice and tall, and it will continue to grow up pretty much for the entire duration of this plate before finally capping out at the point where the top corridor passes through. I've been experimenting with texture designs here to create the lattice pattern that's seen on this model, and I'm going to have to go back in game, of course, to get what I need to finish this, but this is looking like a promising prototype. Some more work needs to be done to get all of the X's, in a sense, to work exactly how I need them to, but I've got most of the snot connections working and I'm really pleased with how they look. The wall is of course too thick, which is helpful because it makes the Technic frame that we're building up even stronger. I was particularly worried about this one given the giant cavity that needs to be here for the actual water pump room to be as tall as it needs to be. Now that the waterfall's capped up, you can also see that this extends a little bit further out beyond the wall. That's for a reason, because there's a little, I almost think it's like a guard post or like an operator room for the water pump over here, which has the lever which turns on the airstream as well. So there'd be an extra little room hidden in here, and this ladder in fact leads up to the door for that as well. As mentioned, of course, all of this room down here has been complete before, and you've seen that already. The only other thing of note is, obviously, this is all one submodel, but this is actually the Technic frame behind here, and I'm using pins on the side to attach tiles to smooth everything off and create this nice bordered technique, which fits perfectly with what we're trying. Then the last thing to mention about this, of course, is that this Technic frame will blend into the rockwork, and it will be the rockwork in front of it will be part of this module. In fact, we've already started to continue the model for the tower here, and all of the beamwork is in place for the scaffolding that's going to continue as we go on up here. I'm looking forward to getting back in game for some references in that. However, I probably won't be touching this one for a while either, because I really got to know what's going on the ground floor next door before I can start working on the up. Although I'm very excited to get back to this room in some point in the future. Now I have one more thing to show you today, and it's pretty boring, so let's get it out the way as we jump to, well, in a sense, something over here on the ground floor. Another piece of rockwork that's been half completed for a really long time has finally got its finish. So, I don't expect any of you to recognise this, but for context, the room where you fight the Staunox to get the Hylian shield sits just behind this lower level here. It bridges two plates. It's actually attached to the plate next door, which is why you can't see it, but it sort of fits into this space. And at the time, of course, I knew that the Hinox room and prison section were at a different height, so I didn't want to make the elevation to the full height. This is the original ground floor height up here, so I'd left this plate with a cut down the middle and no water, so basically it was a half plate. But now we know exactly where the elevation needs to be before the plate goes up to its full height. We've been able to put a topper in, and that is what we've got here. And that basically is just a nice small job which allows us to continue. It also prepares us, because we've had the West Passage entrance inside all the prison tunnels be ready for ages. We're going to be moving into the West Passage in the next couple of weeks and developing all the way up to the front bridge of the castle, somewhere all the way over here. But in the meantime, it's just another rock work finished. And that was this week's whistle-stop tour of the Hyrule Castle progress. I've already almost finished the work I need to do for the next episode, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it. I've been waiting to do some more interior passages, and although the West Passage is largely rock work, it does have a couple of interesting locations which I can't wait to show you. So I hope you're looking forward to seeing that and moving towards the gate. I'm working hard to try and make sure that it moves fast, and also that you guys get to see more context of where things are and placement of each other. It's just, of course, Studio does not like to render everything in at once. Either way, let me know your thoughts on the castle progress this week. I'm particularly pleased with the switchback progress, and I'm looking forward to seeing that fully textured whenever I get around to it. Let me know your thoughts down below, and of course have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next week.